laughing because when you hear voices.
I hear voices. All of them sound like my own,
All right, good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this Philomath Committee, Police Committee meeting on September 10th, 4 p.m. here in our council room in Philomath. Those present in attendance, Councillor Diane Crocker, Councillor Ruth Causey, myself, Chief Dave Gursky, and Chris Workman, our city manager. The first roll of order would be to approve the minutes, and it looks like we're approving minutes for the 13th and the 24th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I have only minutes for the 14th.
Oh,
I think maybe
no, is that the wrong thing?
the minutes from the 13th and 24th were approved last.
Okay. Oh, because so we're, sorry,
Oh, yeah.
approving the minutes from
May 14th.
May 14th then, not June 13th?
I moved to,
Okay.
no, you go ahead. I moved to approve the minutes of May 14th, 2024 as presented. Nice job, Kate. And a second.
Great. All in it. Do we vote on that one? All in. Thank you. Thanks so much. All right. I will now turn the time over to Chief Gursky to proceed with our meeting.
All right, so we have a staffing update. We did lose Thomas DeVick. He had completed the academy, and but we have Colter Forrest that's just passed FTEP, and he's currently assigned to Graveyard Patrol. So he is working solo capacity. On the 4th of this month, we hired Stephen Hartz, who's a new recruit that will be attending the academy in November. And then we have a lateral officer that's from our region that actually grew up here in Philomath, and we just finished his background phase, and we hope to start him in the first part of October. He makes it the rest of the way through. We still have one position open, and that process is currently open for an entry-level or lateral candidate.
Was Thomas Vick, was he hired away? Or?
No, he decided that law enforcement was not for him.
Okay. Make the decision.
Indeed.
Are you able to share the lateral person?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
And let's see, we've got.
You probably taught them though.
Yes.
Yes,
It's true, most people need to. You're so entertaining.
Yes. You can help
Walter's a good one.
with recruiting. Yeah.
My memory is good about it.
We should be just running them by having her screen everything.
I know. We'll incorporate her into our screening
I
process.
can tell you in 8th grade.
When they did my background, they talked to some of my teachers.
Oh, did they really?
Yep. They did. Yep.
I did one for the sheriff's, I had the sheriff's department contact me about one of the recruits that was a student of mine. And that was probably not even 9 months ago.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that was Alex Muncy. Do you remember Muncy? Yes, they just saw in town. Alex is.
There's a Logan,
Hanson.
yeah, who is also a student that is there now. I was assuming it was him, but now.
Community outreach, we've actually been pretty busy over the last several months. So going back to would be about April or May, we had Sergeant Thurman was in the high school, and he was doing a presentation on the dangers of social media and fraud for the students. There were a couple of different scenarios that were popping up, and sounds like that was very well received. I think we'll continue to do that every year. It seemed like that went really well.
What age group was it?
High school.
High school.
Yep. Yep. And then I usually get invited to teach and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but it's a government class for search and seizure.
Amy Leonard?
It was Amy Leonard. Yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years now, I think. And they actually had 2 really good classes. They had great questions. They were really engaged. I always look forward to that, and we'll continue to do that next year. And we also had at Plymouth Middle School, we had Sergeant Thurman present a career day. We had Sergeant Bowers and Officer Forrest that were out at the elementary school doing the bike rodeo. That was Officer Forrest's first time helping out with that. That sounds like he's going to take that over. The parade with the Philomath Frolic and Rodeo. And then we had our national night out. Marcia Gilson helped put that together and really did a great job for us doing that. We had most of our officers there for that as well, including some of our new hires before they were actually hired. They showed up as well. Then we did a kind of a welcome back to school where we hang out in the school zones and greet the kids as they're coming back in with the fire department, and we've kind of extended that and are continuing to do school patrols throughout the year. We plan to continue that. Then last weekend we had the big chili cook-off, and the preliminary numbers are in. Looks like without some of the credit and debit card sales, we raised about $16,700. We've still got some outstanding funds that are still coming in. And then also Katie is back from maternity leave. Special thank you to Marcia Gilson and retired dispatcher Eric Baxter for filling in. They really kind of sacrificed most of their summer to help us out with that. That was a really big help. That we needed them. They really stepped up, so appreciate that.
Do you know if the attendance at the chili cook-off was more than last year?
It was. The number that was reported to me was about 960, a little over 960 this year. And last year, I believe we were about 840, and that doesn't include the contestants. So we probably had a little over 1,000.
Who won?
We won the law enforcement or the police, and then Sheriff's Office had their admin team. They had 5 teams. We had Civil Air Patrol. They won their division, and then we had Oregon State Credit Union. And then we also had KRKT, and I feel like I'm missing somebody. And Corvallis Police Department won. Yep. So we had a great turnout. I mean, we started, I think, some people started cooking right around 6:30 or so in the morning, and I think we were pretty much wrapped up by about 6 o'clock. I think everybody was almost completely cleaned up. There was some housekeeping stuff the next day that went on. Everybody was pretty tired after the end of the day, but great weather, great turnout, good participation, and good chili.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well. And so what do we have next? We've got Trunk or Treat is our next one coming up, and then we'll have Coffee with a Cop at Citizens Bank, and I was talking with Brent Caseman about that, and we're looking at maybe late winter or early spring for that.
What's the date of trunk or treat? Is that?
It is on Halloween.
It is on
Yeah. And then we've got a couple more kind of training / outreach things that will pop up at the school throughout the year. We always do their lockdown drills. We'll send somebody out there to do the kind of evaluate that process and how that's going on. And then additionally, we'll take all of our staff through the schools again here in the next couple of weeks. Make sure that they're familiar with the layouts and points of entrance, exit, all of that.
Let's see, I know there was something in the past minutes about 15th Street. Is that completed, the painting of the crosswalk?
Yes. Not that I checked, but I did.
That's all we have.
So you moved on from wildlife to public events.
Yeah, well, what did we have for this meeting? We just had staff update, and then we had our community outreach.
Okay, well, I've got questions. Yesterday at City Council, we were trained as mandatory reporters. How prevalent is child abuse here in Philomath?
It's something that we investigate on a regular basis for sure. Some of those reports come in ways. Sometimes we get them from dispatch, sometimes they get reported as they're occurring now. And then also we get them referrals from schools and other mandatory reporters, so.
Services or something, I think. I've reported there, but, do you get citizens just calling you up and
Sure.
with concerns? Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
You know, Diane, I heard you mention that, you know, obviously when you guys were teaching, you were mandatory reporters and you made reports. Did any of them go to completion, to action taken, or do you know?
I think that I was not privy to know how far it went. I know it went because I started it, but, and our counselor was often with me when I was calling, so he knew what was up. But again, there's a lot of privacy issues that, so I was not able to know where it went.
We had the same in elementary school. There was a case that I reported on, and the counselor received feedback, but I wasn't privy to anything other than what the school counselor was able to tell me. So I think we report and then just wait to see.
Yeah, most of those investigations are pretty sensitive, and a lot of times it's unfortunate that the reporter doesn't get the feedback to know,
Right.
you know, what's happened, but it's kind of nature of those types of investigations is they're pretty sensitive and confidential.
Interesting that we were required to take that training and required to be mandatory reporters. And in the opening statements, it said, you know, in your role as professionals and interact frequently with children. It's like, I think in the 5 years I've been on council, we've had children here twice. You know, it's just, really?
Well, and we have a multidisciplinary response team that meets weekly, and Sergeant Thurman is a part of that. And so regionally, we have detectives and investigators, as well as DHS and some of the forensic doctors that help us out in those investigations. And we staff those cases on a weekly basis. And then they also attend annual training. So that's something that we take very seriously here in this region, both Lund County and Benton County.
Other than what I saw in the schools, I'm pretty oblivious because I don't see a lot of, you know, however, I mean, I've even had a neighbor tell me that years ago their child was abused and they didn't find out until later. And I knew this child, but I had no idea. And it was just devastating to hear, and that was happening right here in Philomath. But to look at Philomath with rose-colored glasses sometimes, I'm like, oh, it's not happening here, but it is happening. And then my next question, domestic abuse. I've been listening to a podcast, and it's a true. I mean, it's a real thing. It's not in Oregon, on coercive laws on making that a domestic violence. It's not that in every state, so that, but just in general, I'm assuming there is some domestic abuse going on in our area.
Yeah,
And you have to deal with that, and is that a particularly vulnerable time for a police officer to go to the door
absolutely.
when you don't know
It's
who's set
usually
up?
a 2-officer response.
Okay.
Yeah, if we only have one on, then we usually have either a deputy or an officer from a neighboring agency that responds to separate the two, and so we can, you know, complete that investigation. And you don't have the influence from, you know, potential abuser being able to, you know, sit there and stare down the victim and that. So.
Well, the statistic I heard was 3 women a day in America are killed by their abusers. And some of them have gone to officers, and again, this is not Oregon, it's another state. Officers and made complaints and you know, no contact, and that means nothing to the abuser. And the abuser eventually comes through and is able to kill the women. And suppose that could be a man too, I don't mean to. But, I just, I didn't know if that was a common thing, and you do deal with that, and I'm glad to hear you take two.
Yeah, and I think over the last 25 years since we've had there is the mandatory arrest law that's out there for domestic violence or certain domestic violence crimes, we've seen a decrease in that, so I think that's working to some degree, but I think there are some situations where, the abuser is highly motivated, and those are the ones that, there's sensitive and volatile situations that we have to investigate very carefully.
Yeah, like you, I tend to look at Philomath with rose-colored
Yeah.
glasses, but I've had Ken and I've got Dave to keep me grounded. That we're not immune to those types of crimes, and fortunately, our officers do a great job of handling those calls and taking care of them and getting to whatever resolution they can, without them getting into the limelight and getting on the front page of the newspaper and all those other things. But they're no less egregious. That just, it happens, and there's penalties, and people go to jail, and people have to move forward. But those crimes are still happening in Philomath, and so it takes every bit of training and knowing how to deal with those situations. Our officers aren't immune to that just because they're in a small town like Philomath. It's still happening. So.
And is there count, sometimes, we have a friend that works down in Los Angeles, and he's in the child abuse division. They have divisions of the department there, and they actually offer counseling. He goes to counseling because some of the things he sees are so difficult to process. And do we have the wherewithal if anyone in the department needs counseling
Absolutely.
in order to get that in certain situations because of experiences or
You bet.
situations they've been in that have been disturbing? So we have that available.
You bet. Yeah.
There's an organization that provides, it's actually spiritual counseling to officers and first responders.
Here locally?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah.
So
They've actually come and presented, I think, I can't remember the name of it right now. I think they're headquartered in Albany.
it is something chaplaincy. I just received an email a couple weeks ago, I think. I think I know what you're talking about. Interesting.
Really good organization. I've heard them present a couple of times. One thing I wanted to ask you about, I was reading in Representative Gomberg's newsletter that as of September 1st, some of the drugs that were no longer illegal under Measure 210
110, yeah.
are now illegal again. 110, I apologize.
Yeah.
Have you noticed an impact?
Not yet. In fact, we actually have an upcoming training on that. We've sent out some literature to our officers about that from the DA's office, and so they're familiar with it. They know what the changes are. We've had updates in our software because now those have they've been reclassified from violations to criminal offenses again. So there's a little bit there. We have some officers that have never had to investigate criminal drug crimes. They've been violations since they started. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve there. But like I said, we've got some training upcoming on that.
Did Blake Bowers, is he still here and is he finished his DRE?
He is. Yep. He is certified.
Please pass on our congratulations.
I will.
But that's a huge thing for us.
It is.
Back to the domestic abuse, where do they go to court if they are arrested for that?
Benton County Circuit Court. All of those get routed through circuit court record. Yeah, they do not get routed.
Which is
through
why
municipal
we
courts.
probably hear nothing. I mean, that's fine, I don't need to hear about it, but it's sad to know that it is happening here.
I have a couple of questions. One is the traffic with the construction. How do we do through the construction process on the streetscapes with maintaining? I haven't noticed any, other than the one accident I drove by was it on 13th? Where someone went into the,
Yes.
like
Oh,
a
gosh.
culvert there.
Yeah.
I think
I'm only aware of two. That one and one other one early on that was on Main Street where they had gone off into kind of an abrupt shoulder.
Okay.
But aside from that, I'm not aware of
Oh,
any
good.
others, so I think
Good,
they did a good job.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty well regulated. As
I
far as
wonder
I'm
if
saying.
that's fewer than normal. It probably is with all the
Yeah.
markings and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought we'd have more, to be honest, and the way it looked sometimes, I thought we'd have more troubles than we did. Because it was, you know, it was different.
It's looking beautiful now.
It is looking
It's
beautiful.
wonderful.
I actually have a complaint because it's so attractive. I find myself driving
Uh-oh.
below the speed limit. It's like, oh,
Um,
it's perfect.
Yeah.
So maybe we could put in some dead trees or something.
So they can
Right.
call up and complain about the dead trees. I don't think so. 'Cause I can do that all right, but yeah.
There.
Oh, yes.
Just someone complained.
Yes, yes. And the two, what, are there really two signs there?
I don't.
Are there really two?
It's being replaced and they just haven't pulled down.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm like, two signs.
Typically, you put the new one up before you take the old one down, so you don't have a period of time with no stop sign.
Right.
And they happen to snap the photo on a day when the old one hadn't been removed yet.
Okay. All right. I see.
Stop twice and turn twice.
Yeah.
It's sometimes comical what people will complain about, but kind of a gotcha, what a waste of money, It's just like, no, there's a purpose behind it.
Well, that entire two-way bike lane is, that's a pretty complex arrangement.
Yeah, I actually got an email from Jenna at ODOT. She was the one that kind of inspired that and helped design that and get that implemented and got the funding for that. It was almost another whole $2 million worth of ODOT active transportation funds that went into our project specifically for that cycle track there. And so she was in town just earlier this week and snapped a bunch of photos and was sending it statewide saying, look at the project in Wilmouth. It's the best cycle track we've got in our whole region. And really, really bragging on kind of the progressive nature that we've taken on our state highway to allow safe route and passage for bikes on the highways. So she was very proud of the project and toting it. And so we're planning on trying to nail down a date for kind of a grand reopening, if you will, or project completion sometime the first part of October. So once we get that date set, we'll get some save the dates out to everybody and make sure that we get ODOT and our contractor, everybody invited. So we're working on that now, but yeah, that cycle track, we've already heard some stories of some people using it to park and wait for, their rides to come out. A Lyft driver was parked there the other day and waiting, and somebody else was driving down the middle of it.
Yeah. I've
And got
done that.
stopped. They're like, "What is?" I was like, "I'm just checking out the new bike lane."
It's
Um,
for bike.
Yeah. So it'll take a little getting used to, but by and large, for the biking community that's trying to get down to downtown, it's going to make a big difference for folks.
I noticed on 13th of Main, like probably 4 or 5 days ago, you could not make a right turn on red. And then the sign disappeared. So I think now you can make a right turn on. I thought it was actually a good idea because it's so hard to tell which lane people are in when they're coming toward you. But
Yeah, I heard about that sign as well, but then I never saw it. So
Was it a hanging one that said head up? I saw something.
yeah.
Like that, yeah. Social media, take it with a grain of salt. I have heard two things about the police department. One was, yay, the police department just stopped a speeder right in front of me and I'm very, very excited. And then the other one was, they're speeders and they're not being stopped down Main Street. And I'm thinking with the construction, we're not messing with it. But now, I don't know, are people slowing down?
So on Labor Day weekend, I think we 25 or 30 citations that were written.
Yay.
And we've also,
I mean,
it's also helpful that our staffing levels are going up. We've got Coulter as in working in a solo capacity, so you're going to see those numbers in speed enforcement and other traffic enforcement duties increase now that we've got the personnel to do that. So that should only get better as we get more solo officers out on the street.
good.
I think especially around school zones, I'm really particular about, when there's kids around, I think they kind of deserve, nothing personal, but I think they deserve a ticket if they're speeding through and kids are present. I think a ticket would be warranted.
Yeah, there's not a lot of leniency there. Don't give nearly as many warnings in that school. So
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause
I
I
think
just-
it is the warning.
Yep.
Yeah, I just
Yep.
think that's just dangerous. There is one other question. I don't know what the vehicle is called, but I can describe it. It's kind of like a large one-wheeled where they stand and ride it. I don't know what that's called. Have you seen them? It's like a large wheel and then they stand on either side of the wheel. It's very cool.
I would
But we have a gentleman that is just really going quite fast. I mean, very, very. So there's no speed thing on those that requirements. If it's 25 for a car, would it not be 25 for the bike as well, or whatever that's called?
So we've got a whole nother publication for motorized vehicles that are not necessarily cars. They're, whether they be scooters, gas-powered, electric bikes. I'd have to reference it. It's actually hanging in our briefing room right now. And that's something that the officers use to base their decisions on what they're going to stop and what they have the authorization to stop.
So they are authorized to stop those vehicles as well if they are being unsafe.
You
or-
bet.
And it seems likely if they're exceeding the speed limit, even though they're not a vehicle, that there would be some sort of warning or to them too. Because boy, they go really. He passed me, and I was going. I'm thinking he's got to be going 35 maybe.
Does he go on, in here?
Pioneer, and up down 9th, which is kind of crazy because it's kind of a fast down 9th as it comes downhill. But now he's worried that he's gonna, because there's not a lot of protection. They're just standing
Right.
on those things, and if he were to take even at 35 miles an hour, I imagine he'd be hurt if you fell onto the pavement. So I was just wondering if there was regulations for those. So there he is.
There's
He
a
just went
whole
out.
page, yeah.
Okay.
It's a one-page publication that's come out
Okay.
on all of those vehicles because we've got so many now. I mean, some of them are regulated by how many cc's, by wattage, depending on what the power source is. But
Yeah,
Still, the only helmet law is 16 and below, is that correct?
that's correct. Yep.
interesting. Other questions?
No, I'm
Concerns?
good.
Oh, and then just one comment, we got a really nice, long email, today from a resident, past Mayor Neiman, complimenting the police department. Chief did a great job of talking about all of the public outreach that's done, and, Mr. Neiman made a note of that, as a resident, he's seen them at all of these events and made note of every single one of those and how he saw officers there, communicated with the officers, and just the presence that our officers have in the community, and complimented the chief for continuing to have a presence in the community and doing that outreach. I think it's really, really important. So just want to thank Mr. Neiman for the email, but more specifically chief and the department for all the work that they're doing. It does take extra time and extra effort, and some of those officers come in on overtime and do put in extra time to be a face to the community. And so I think that's commendable and will continue. And then the other is I was in a meeting this earlier today with the school superintendent, and she wanted me to express appreciation for having the officers around the first week or so of school. Did talk to her about some of the changes coming our way that allow for us to be around the schools a little bit more in the mornings, which she was excited to hear. But she's just really grateful as well for the work that they put in that first week or so. It just really helps keep things calm, definitely helps keep traffic calm, and anybody who starts thinking about getting upset has to just look over the shoulder and see an officer there and kind of help calm things a little bit more. So it was greatly appreciated having the officers out and about. I know Chief was out in his vehicle, and just about everybody was out in the vehicle. I think all the vehicles were out somewhere around the schools that first week helping out.
It's
So
huge.
And I think that, and I do think that really builds a confidence in our community, and that feeling of confidence then breeds an openness to then even better communicate and reach out when help is needed, rather than a hesitance of I don't want to get the police involved. No, we know who these individuals are, and we've had interactions, and there's a relationship formed that eases into that openness of being able to.
And I've tried to solicit feedback from the crossing guards as well. If they're seeing problems, not to wait and to go ahead and call us when it's occurring. Try to increase our presence there.
Right.
And more than anything, I think with the presence, it diffuses some potential problems that if we weren't there, they might spiral. out of control, so.
I know Sergeant Thurman's been in touch with Superintendent Holiday as well about intersections and crossings and whatnot. So, you know, it's not just that they're driving by, they're there, they're interacting with the school. And again, giving advice and suggestions, getting feedback. And so, you know, it's a good working relationship there. Just while mentally I'm on 16th Street, we just set a date earlier today. We're going to do a grand reopening ceremony this Friday at 3 o'clock. I know it's not a lot of notice, but the further we get into the fall, the more busy everybody gets. So this Friday at 3, everybody's welcome to attend. I'm going to try to get some milk and cookies there for everybody, and it'll just be right in the front of the elementary school. So kids will get out at noon on Fridays, and staff will be done and be able to come out at about 3 and participate. So everybody's invited to that. But again, just on the safety side of things, we did kind of debrief. I said, is it working? Does it feel more safe? Have we created issues that we weren't intending? And what I heard from the principal and school superintendent was it's working great. People are figuring it out. They're getting their route down. Kids are getting dropped off. And they just said, it's busy and things are moving, but it feels very safe. Like people are know where they're supposed to be, and kids are all separated from all the buses. The bus drop-off zone versus the parent drop-off zone are separated now, so you don't have that built-in conflict, and so they've really noticed the difference. Yeah, so we'll see. We're still seeing high traffic numbers at 19th and Applegate.
That's what I was gonna ask about. 19th and Applegate,
I went on like the second day of the high school was open when everybody was there and just sat and videotaped for a little bit. And still saw the lines kind of backing up and people getting over into the right lane to make the right-hand turn and forming 2 lanes where there should only be 1. And some other things. I'm going to go scout it out again next week and just kind of look anecdotally at that intersection in the mornings and kind of see how it feels. We did put in for some grant money for the Safe Routes for All program, which is run through the state. They do provide grants for both planning and for projects, but you can't get the projects until you've done their planning. And even though we did our school traffic circulation study, it wasn't sufficient. And they want us to do a full action plan is what they call it. Their term is an action plan that identifies throughout the entire community those areas of concern and comes up with the recommendations. Sound very familiar, right? Like what we just did.
Yep.
It's just that it wasn't their format, their layout, everything else. So anyway, so I've applied for a grant with them to do an actual action plan for the city of Philomath, and that'll put us in a position to apply for future grants to continue to do improvements as we've done. So primary school and out at the highway and out of 16th Street and 15th Street crossing and all these little areas that we're identifying or that were identified. That'll give us a little bit more better opportunity to get some more funding from outside of town to help pay for some of that. So hopeful. Those grants are pretty competitive, but you know, we've been a strong application, so hopefully we'll hear back in the next month or so. Move forward with those. So keep trying to make it safer.
Would you still advocate a roundabout there or no?
you too.
So actually, with the grant, for the planning grant for the Safe Routes for All action plan, I also submitted a secondary request or an additional supplemental request to just look at that intersection. And it wasn't a whole lot more money, maybe another $10,000 or $20,000, which in planning money goes pretty quick, but just to look at that intersection, to look at the potential for a traffic circle or roundabout or some other layout than what we have right now, which isn't safe. You know, there's just no way to say it. For that half an hour before and after schools, it's not safe, and we're just tempting fate. So we need to do something. So yeah, again, hopefully if we're successful in getting the one, we'll get both grants, and we'll be able to do a specific study just on that area and come up with some solutions and then come up with some funding and try to get it done. 16th Street took a lot of our money, our transportation fund. It sucked it almost down to the bone, and so it's going to take us a little bit of time to build up some funds again. We get money every year, but it's never enough to do a large project. A lot of it goes towards maintenance, and then to do a project the size and the scope of 16th Street, we saved money for quite a few years to be able to do that. It's almost almost a $2 million project, so we can't just do those every year, so we'll have to kind of regroup and get a plan and then start saving. I'm looking for outside funding to do another project of that scope. So we'll see. I'm not committing to a traffic circle or a roundabout, but it is something I think we'll need to look at. I think it's a solution to be considered there.
I think over the last year or so, whenever we put the piling things outside of Clemens and then that 16th Street are huge improvements. And they may be small, but I think it makes the safety so much better. And I wanted to also commend the police department for getting in the schools and I'm sure we cannot overestimate the value of the students getting to see you as people and some comfort level there that should pay off for years in the future. So I think that's really important. And good job for that.
You know, Officer Kathy used to always say that when he would pull someone over and if their child was with him, the child would be so excited to see them. And he'd be riding the bear in a deer. Kind of a mixed response.
Generations of Philomath residents that know Officer Kepi from his work in the school. And I think we want to continue that. That was something that has served us really well over the last 30 plus years.
Started that safety town because
Yep.
that's the beginning that for most kids to have that opportunity.
And then there's the bike rodeo, which is also run by our continuance. That's big. Kids just love the bike rodeo. It's fun and exciting, and they look forward to it every year. So I'm glad we're
Yeah, you guys give away some pretty good prizes.
We do. Yeah. There's really two very nice bikes.
My oldest daughter won one of those bikes, I think 5th grade year. They weren't going to give it to her because she was my daughter. And I was just like, come on, you can pick a bike for my kid. So she ended up getting it still. We still have it. The younger kids ride it now. So that served us well.
Need to remember that that's where it's from.
He absolutely remembers. He's very particular about who rides that bike. Still. She's 18 years old and she's still riding her little 5th grade bike. With that bike.
All right, if there's nothing further, should we put on the next meeting, a date for the next meeting? It'd be helpful to me. We put a date for the next meeting on the
I think
calendar.
we've been every 2 months.
November's tricky, so that's a good idea to get that.
So we're going
Veterans Day and
November 12th?
that on Tuesday?
Is it not?
I don't know. Veterans Day is November 11th. That's all I know.
Oh, that's true.
So next meeting, November 12th at 4 p.m. And if there's nothing further, does that work?
That works for me. Yeah.
Anything else? Anything further from anyone before we adjourn the meeting? If not, meeting is adjourned.